I believe I'm live. Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Been a minute since I've done a stream. Come on in. Yes, excellent. Great. Things seem to be working. This is my first time streaming on a new laptop, so hopefully everything is in order. Let's see. Whoop, sorry. I tried playing the stream on my phone and I got an ad. I thought my sound was off. How's everybody doing today? Good. Excellent. So we've got some folks coming in already. That's good. So today I think is probably going to be more chill than some of the more recent streams. It's just me today and more of a general discussion slash theory Q&A stream. Or general Q&A stream, really. I have the iceberg up here because I'd gone through that. I think the last time I did a Q&A and I was around here. I'm not sure on that, but yeah, no, great. I think this does seem to be working. Can you all hear me? It's always good to make sure I'm not just talking to myself, or at least more than I currently am. Good morning. I'm still in bed. I wish I were too. I've been up since like 5 this morning. I had to drive somebody to the airport. Did I just read that the younger, more beautiful queen is younger Cersei? I think that's on here. Yeah, there's some weird stuff on here, especially lower down. It's pretty extensive, even though they use the wrong here, right here. Excellent, good. Really low. I will turn up the volume, and hopefully that'll be better. Okay, I've turned up my mic volume a little bit. Is this better? Worse? Let me see. Excellent. Also, my chat thing doesn't seem to be working, which is strange. Good morning, folks. Come on in. I figured that because I don't have a video today, I think this is the first time in like a year that I haven't posted a video on a Sunday, so I figured I'd stream instead. I'm deciding to be a bit more kind of free flowing with videos. I'm going to post when videos are ready, not just on Sundays every week, because Sundays tend to be just, I don't know, it's been weird. What role will Sir Pounce play in the Winds of Winter? A big one, undoubtedly. Excellent. Yeah, great. So hopefully this volume level is better. Yeah, stream without the late Lord Haven. We streamed on his channel a couple days ago, which you can check out there. He actually just had a video on Harrenhal come out, so go check that out after this stream. We can't hear you. Okay. I'm turning the volume up a little more. Okay. I've thought about adding a face cam, yeah, but I'm not sure how to do that. I'm the least tech savvy person you will ever know, and I really don't know how to set up a computer to link to my camera or whatever. Okay, folks, excellent. We got 38 people here right now. That's nice. So yeah, let's start taking a look at some of these theories here. Starting with a personal favorite of mine, Bolt On. Bolt-On I really like. I don't think it's necessarily true, but I think thematically there are a lot of interesting elements at play there. It's the idea that not Ramsay Bolton, Roose Bolton is a vampire, an immortal skin changer who is essentially hopping from person to person over the annals of history, and he's described as being this kind of lifeless figure for most of the book series, and that is kind of added on to by the fact that he resembles an other in many ways, most notably with his eyes, and people believe that because of that, maybe he's been alive forever. So, yeah, I don't think that's necessarily true, but I do like the element of the theory that states that the reason Ramsay is still alive and so valuable to Roose is because they have the same eyes. So Ramsay could be like another in the line of Roose's going forward. Morning. What time is it in the U.S.? Right now it is 11:05 for me. I'm on the U.S. Eastern Seaboard. I forgot that Europe exists. Yeah, that time difference is quite a bit. Yeah, no. So this is going to be both me checking out theories from this iceberg, and you guys can also feel free to ask questions about theories or just general questions that you want to ask. I'm good to answer any and everything that I'd be happy to. I agree, Vincent. I find Roose a lot scarier if he's not supernatural at all. I wholeheartedly agree with that. I don't know why the chat window isn't working for this one. It worked perfectly last time. Might be a new computer thing. I'll go over that another time. But yeah, let's see. So the next one is stating that Bloodraven will steal Bran's body. The idea here is that I think it kind of comes from the show where after Bran becomes the quote unquote three-eyed raven, he's so depersonalized and not his own person at all. The idea is that Bloodraven has brought Bran up here because he needs a new form to occupy. That being said, I do think that that's pretty unlikely given the fact that, I don't know, he could steal like Jojen's body, and it's a body that is able to function more than Bran's, so I'm not sure. Hey Quinn, will you leave the VOD so that we can watch it later? Greetings from Poland. I will leave the VOD up. The only reason it didn't go up last time is because it got weird rendering, and this one should go up right away. Expand on Cersei being the younger, more beautiful queen. That's an interesting one. I actually haven't heard that before. I guess the idea here would be that, like, Cersei's paranoia is going to be the thing to cast her down. The idea that she once was this young and beautiful figure who, perhaps, at least in her own mind, has been reduced by time and by losing all of her allies, by being really bad at ruling. Younger, more beautiful Queen of Cersei. I'm going to actually Google that one. Younger, more beautiful. If I could type, Queen is Cersei. The younger, more beautiful queen is Cersei herself. We're going to the Reddit, folks. Buckle up. Let's see. Meryl Florent is the person who posted this. Thank you, Meryl Florent. That's interesting. Oh, so this says that it's Lyanna Stark. This is not the theory that we're looking for. So I don't know that this even is a real theory. Maybe they're just typing random stuff into the iceberg. I'm not sure. I do like that idea, though, that it could be Lyanna that's the younger and more beautiful queen, because she does kind of take everything that she wants from her relationship with Robert, as Robert is just obsessed with Lyanna even after Lyanna's death. That is, I think that's my favorite show-only scene, which is the conversation between Robert and Cersei. I think it's in The Wolf and the Lion, which might be my favorite episode. It's fantastic. Hey, Fantasy Haven. Welcome. Yeah. Younger, more beautiful queen. I could also see it being Aerion. I think Aerion is probably the most likely candidate, at least in the immediate story of The Winds of Winter, because I give it probably a 95% chance of her marrying Aegon and the two of them ousting Cersei from power. I do also like the idea that it could be Sansa, but I do think that Sansa's plot is mostly focused northward for the series going forward. Primarily due to that prophecy that I think it's Arya gets from the Ghost of Highheart in Storm, saying that she sees the woman from the Purple Wedding, being Sansa, killing a giant in a castle made of snow, so killing Littlefinger in Winterfell. Hopefully a lot better than the show. We still need Barristan as a point of view in Meereen. We have an excess of point of views in Meereen. We got Tyrion, we got Victarion. We've got a lot of stuff going on in Meereen, and I do think that Barristan's probably on his way out, unfortunately. I love his point of views in Dance. I really like him as a character, but if there's a character I think is going to die early in the Winds of Winter, it's Barristan and it's Aeron, unfortunately. Aeron, I think, will have another chapter, but I don't think he'll have any more after that. Because I think Martin did confirm, either in an interview or on Not a Blog, that The Forsaken is not Aeron's only chapter, which is great because it's an excellent chapter and I want more of that. I think it could potentially be Ario Hota if he has to go kill Darkstar. I don't know which it you're referring to there. Oh, first super chat. Thank you. Hey Quinn the GM, how do you feel about the Green Ronin, A Song of Ice and Fire TTRPG? I think House Creation is pretty cool, but IRL, nobody wants to run it around me. Honestly, I think pretty much the same thing. I've read through it, and I think it's super interesting. I love it. But the system is fairly crunchy as a TTRPG term. For those who aren't familiar, it's very dependent on the mechanics. And I haven't really found anybody who'd be willing to play it so far, but I'd love to run it someday, because it would very much kind of marry the two halves of my channel. The TTRPG stuff I did up until like last August, and now the Song of Ice and Fire stuff. First POV death, I think, is probably Barristan. Let's see. The castle made of snow is meant to parallel Sansa built castle. Oh, that's an interesting point. The snow castle in the Eyrie could be, but we already saw that happen, and that did not result in Littlefinger's death. It resulted in Lysa's, and I don't think that Lysa is the giant in this vision. I think that would be rather mean to Lysa to think that she was. Aeron is the younger, more beautiful queen. I think you're right. Do you think Daenerys' vision of her battling the others on the Trident will come true? Honestly, I hope so. I think that could be a really interesting place for that final confrontation to take place. And I've had the thought that that battle could occur, and I think that that might not be the final battle in the conflict with the others. I tend to think that the conflict with the others will end at the Isle of Faces, because it is this super mystical location that's been built up to throughout the entire series, but we've not had anybody go there or do anything there at this point, and I think that hopefully it ends up doing something. Although we might also see it in House of the Dragon, which would be pretty neat. I hope that we do. Albeit I doubt that would be until whatever season the Battle Above the Gods Eye would happen, which I assume is probably end of 3, if I were a betting man. Let's keep looking at some theories. Melisandre being Azor Ahai, I've also never heard of, and I don't know, Melisandre being Azor Ahai. From her point of view chapter, we don't know if she was born amidst salt and smoke or anything. We know she was probably born in slavery. She's associated with the Red God, who kind of delivers this prophecy, but I don't really think that's at all the possibility. Oh, you who are watching this stream are getting a small preview of Tuesday's video, but I will be talking about Cold Hands in Tuesday's video. Benjen equals Cold Hands is a pretty prominent theory that this mysterious half-undead figure that we see appear in A Storm of Swords is Benjen, the vanished uncle of the Starks, who ended up just dropping out of the story entirely towards the back half of A Game of Thrones. However, this doesn't seem to be the case for two primary reasons. The first of which is that in the cave, Leaf tells Bran that he was killed by the others, quote-unquote, long ago. And long ago really wouldn't count as 2 years ago for somebody who lives 170 years like the Children of the Forest. And additionally, we have an old draft, I believe from the Cushing Library, of a early version of, I think it's Bran 2, A Dance with Dragons, where Gurm's editor says, oh, I think this Cold Hands person is Benjen, and Martin just writes no in red pen and circles it like he's a 5th grade math teacher. But yeah, no, Benjen unfortunately is not Cold Hands, so luckily the show is wrong there. Let's see, let's take a look at the chat. George did say that he isn't, yeah. Oh, what do I think Penny's role in the future of the series is? I think that assuming she survives the Battle of Fire, which I'd give her probably a 50% role to do, I think she's the angel on Tyrion's shoulder going forward. Tyrion himself is kind of going to be the devil on Daenerys' shoulder, so I think it'll be interesting to have a character around who kind of pulls Tyrion back towards the light and the good within himself, even though that kind of got completely shut down throughout A Dance with Dragons. How important will Howland Reed be? Howland Reed, I don't think, is going to take any actions that are super important, but I think the information that he carries is going to be incredibly important. He's going to be the way we get confirmation on R plus L equals J, rather than it being Sam and Bran. I do think it'll still be Bran, but I don't think it will be Sam. How long will Stannis survive? Good question, Juan. I think that Stannis will survive. My guess is 2/3 into the Winds of Winter, if not 3/4. I like the suggestion that Stannis will end up manning the wall, and maybe he'll be an epilogue point of view in order to see the wall fall and the others come through. But that I'm not entirely sure that that's necessarily likely. I do think that he'll probably end up taking Winterfell, but following that, I don't really know what his plan of action would be, given just the chaos that's going to happen in the South with Aegon, with Cersei, with everything that's happened. Oh, I realized I should tweet about this. I forgot to do that. Tweet, or X, or whatever. God, that site is awful and dying, but I will tweet it regardless. So yeah, let's take a look at some more of these theories here. Howland Reed is the High Sparrow, Shrouded Lord, Night's King, and Prince that was promised. That is a great point. Yeah, I do think Bran will end up doing something on the Isle of Faces. Garyon Lannister equals the Shrouded Lord is a theory that doesn't have a ton of supporting evidence, but it's one that I like quite a bit. Specifically because the Shrouded Lord has a lot of connections to Tyrion, And Martin has talked a lot about wanting to have this chapter between Tyrion and the Shrouded Lord for some reason, and it's not really clear as to why that reason is. And I think that it being his long lost favorite uncle who's fallen so far as kind of a mirror for how much Tyrion has fallen is super interesting, and I really like that idea. Let's see. I do think Jon Snow is going to get white hair after the resurrection. I'm like 70% on that. It's very anime, and I think that's right up Martin's alley. Yeah. General question: what's the ratio of vinegar and oil to homemade salad dressing? I'm not sure. I've never made salad dressing before. I'm more of a baker than a cook myself, but we shall see. As all grandmothers are, I think. Do you think Victarion will sail the Dothraki Sea? Oh, probably not. I'm not going to say the rest of that, but it's unlikely. I do hope Victarion survives, though. His interactions with Tyrion would be absolute gold. Hodor is related to Dunk, I believe, is confirmed by Martin. And given the fact that we know that he goes to Winterfell in a future Dunk and Egg story, I think that's just pretty overall likely that he's related to Dunk, in addition to just the author's confirmation. It might have been that he confirmed Brienne was related to Dunk, but I don't recall which off the top of my head. Arbor Gold is the sign of treachery. I've got a whole video on that one. You should check it out. Same with Red Wedding 2. Syrio equals Jaqen. I do not buy in the book canon, but I do think that in the show canon, it's probably true. I like that interpretation of events quite a lot, whereas in the show, or in the books, there's not really as much evidence for it. Dornish Master Plan is an interesting one. There are elements of it that I believe. This is the idea that Doran Martell has this vast, all-consuming conspiracy that is fueled by magic and by several other things, and I think that elements of it are probably true, but I think that other elements are a bit too far-fetched for me. It is a very good video series, though, that I just rewatched, I think, what was that, in April? God, this year's flying by. I need to watch more of that. Yeah, no. Mace is actually smart is a theory that I've considered doing a video on, and maybe I will in the future. It's the idea that Mace is seemingly just kind of a dumbass throughout the entirety of the series, but maybe he's actually smart because he's kept his family out of pretty much everything in terms of overall casualties, and by besieging Storm's End and doing so unsuccessfully, he is able to avoid any great Tyrell catastrophe. Let's see. Dunk the Long thick as a castle wall. Absolutely true. My only regret in my Kingsguard videos, I didn't work that in. Let's see. I like the idea that Jon's real name is Viserys. I like it too. I didn't mention that in my Jon names video. That is a distinct possibility, given that he was obsessed with naming his kids Aegon, Rhaenys, and Visenya. That is a nitpick of mine. Why did he name the first daughter Rhaenys if he was going for recreating the three heads of the dragon? The oldest was Visenya, and I feel like he would want to stick to that. So let's see. Yeah, if Game of Thrones was never a TV show, Dream of Spring would already be published. Money went to his head. I don't know if that's true. I think the TV show is definitely a contributing factor in the decline of the pace of the books coming out, but I think that a big portion of it as well is just how much this story has grown, as he is a gardener, like he said. Let's see. Fish people built the sea stone chair. So the Squishers are kind of a mythical race of people that supposedly exist in the sea. And the idea there is that this strange oily black stone crops up at several points in the series, and there's no real information as to its origin, and that might be corresponding to the people who live under the sea, as it is a chair that is carved into, I believe, the shape of some sea animal and used by the Ironborn to just use as a ruling throne. Serious question, what are the Hightowers up to? Just chilling in their tower, you know how it be. They're probably going to have a big role in Sam's plot, if I had to guess. Personally, I don't necessarily think that Euron is headed to Old Town, but if he does, I could see them also playing a big role there. Let's see. Varys is the perfumed seneschal. I'm considering doing a video on the perfumed seneschal, if I could speak, as well, because there are a lot of interesting candidates. The idea here is that Quaithe gives Viserys this prophecy to beware the perfumed seneschal. And there are a bunch of characters who could meet that description. There are some in Meereen and there are some outside of Meereen. And Varys is very well known for his perfumes and generally just matches this description quite well. And he is supporting Aegon rather than Daenerys. So the thought here seems to be that Varys is going to act as a betrayer of some sort or otherwise work against Daenerys. It's also worth noting that I believe the ship that Tyrion and Jorah was sailing on also had some name that corresponded to Perfumed Seneschal. But Stinky Seward, that is it. Stinky Seward was the name of Tyrion and Jorah's ship, and I think that that is probably the most likely thing that they were asking to kind of beware of. I haven't ever heard the theory that Aemon was poisoned. I think he just died of being 102. That's interesting. Do you guys know any evidence for Aemon being poisoned, or is this just conjecture? Azor Ahai was a dragon rider. We've heard dragons described as flaming swords before, so I think the idea here is that perhaps Lightbringer was a dragon rather than a physical sword. And I kind of tied into this with videos on Lightbringers as well, and the fact that maybe Drogon or one of Daenerys' dragons could act as Lightbringer, not Lifebringer. Let's see. Do you think Nymeria fought at the Whispering Woods? In the books, it hints towards it. My current reread of the series is kind of weird because I was living somewhere else for the earlier half of this year, and the only two books I had with me were Dance and Feast. So I've been doing a reverse reread. I read Dance, and then Feast, and then Storm, and I'm about halfway through Clash right now. So I might have more to say on Nymeria and the Whispering Wood in Clash. Or once I get to a Game of Thrones, because I think that's when it happens. Let's see. Yeah, no, I don't think he's described as eating or drinking anything after he leaves Castle Black, so I really don't think so. He was 102, and this is a medieval society. I think he just died from being on a boat. Varys planted Shay is another interesting idea, given the fact that Varys has these little birds everywhere, and Tyrion finds Shay and ends up forming this connection with her. I think it's less likely that Shay was planted, and perhaps more likely that maybe she started working with Varys or someone else after she was already close to Tyrion, because there really was no guarantee that she was going to get so close to Tyrion. Aemon died because left wall magic. That's an interesting point. Huh. I kind of like that read of it. I don't think poison is very likely, but given the fact that we hear from Melisandre that magic is so much stronger at the wall, maybe there is something to being a Targaryen at the wall. That's really interesting. How do you feel about House Frey going extinct in this generation? I don't think they'll go extinct, but I think they'll probably fracture and probably lose the twins. Let's see. Aemon was poisoned by Sir Pounce. That is a great point. Except Gatehouse Amy. Gatehouse Amy needs to live. That's the most important part of the series. Have I missed any up here? No, I have not. So, Oberyn poisoned Tywin. I do not feel the need to explain. That's a super common one. There's an Alt-Shift-X video on it that I really like, and you should just check that video out. Summerhall related to the Doom. That's interesting. So Summerhall was this big ritual in this old Targaryen palace to hatch dragon eggs, and it ended up wiping out a king and a bunch of other people, and Dunk the Hunk, unfortunately. And I guess this is saying that perhaps similar magics were used at Summerhall that ended up causing the Doom. I could see that, but I do think the Doom might have been kind of a naturally occurring event, given the fact that it was such a volcanic area around Valyria, which helped with the dragons, but overall would not help in the event of a massive eruption. Additionally, there's the fact that the Faceless Men claim to have done the Doom, so who knows? There were no Faceless Men at Summerhall, as far as we know. Grand Northern Conspiracy, I think I've talked about a bit throughout several videos. I've talked about in Stannis' camp, and I think the Wyman Manderley video as well. That is the idea that a bunch of agents in the North are working to restore the Starks. I think that overall this idea isn't as ubiquitous as one would think, but I think there are a bunch of smaller conspiracies all trying to work to restore the Starks to the throne. The throne of the North. The seat of Lord of Winterfell. Fagon as Varys' son is interesting. I've heard that Fagon is Illyrio's son, but not Varys' son. Am I in the new Fantasy Haven video? No, this is part 2 on Harrenhal. I was in part 1. Could the Tattered Prince be Garyon Lannister? That's an interesting take on it. I think the physical description doesn't really match Lannister very well. But I've seen an interesting thought that maybe the Tattered Prince was supposed to be like Jamie after the 5 year time skip, which I think is fascinating. But overall, I just like speculating on how things might have gone with the time skip overall. Um, Do I see any possibility of a happy ending for Aegon the Sixth? I wish I could say so, mostly out of love for Jon Con, but I really don't think so. I think Aegon's best case scenario is being exposed for a Blackfire and maybe surviving because of it if he like abdicates. But yeah, no, unfortunately, I don't think Aegon the Sixth is going to do all that great. I mean, I think he's going to do great. I just don't think he's going to live very long. Big Walder killed Little Walder. Personally, this is a theory that I heard a long, long time ago, given the fact that we do see Big Walder return to Winterfell after his cousin's death with a lot of blood all over him and seemingly very rattled. I think that that's kind of what Martin wants you to think. I am very partial to the Frey in the Snow theory, the thought that I think the theory says that Ramsay killed Little Walder. I like that idea a lot. Hooded Man equals Hal or Harwin. Both of these are northern supporters who end up kind of just circulating around the north in random points that we don't really know of, and maybe they made their way back to Winterfell, maybe not. In terms of the Hooded Man, I like the idea that he was just a figment of Theon's imagination and was just something that he made up entirely. Given the fact that Theon is in such a difficult place in A Dance with Dragons, and this kind of acts as his turning point. This is just before he begins to re-embrace who he is, and I like the idea that he got there on his own through this almost split personality type deal. Bran the Builder was a wizard. I think that's probably just true, given the fact that the Wall is so magical and Storm's End is known to be magical. And yeah, I don't think that's up for debate. Others made the wall / helped is also quite interesting. The thought is that it is this massive wall made of ice, and I think that overall the just ability to make it seems to be much more of a White Walker capability than a human one, and perhaps that Bran the Builder helped build it with the others. It's also worth noting that around the time of the Night's King, that was also Bran, so maybe that was the same Bran, but I don't think it was, because it's after the wall was built. Let's see. The death of Joffrey was an attempt. It sure was. Some of these are a little poorly typed. Maesters plotted the downfall of the Targaryens. Oh, I should credit this as well. This is on Iceberg Charts, A Song of Ice and Fire Theory Iceberg. Somewhere. Oh, yes. Made by Xander JC on Twitter. Thank you, Xander JC. And I've just completely lost my place. Okay. Maesters plotted the downfall of the Targaryens. This comes from Marwyn the Mage, who states that, who do you think killed the dragons last time? Marwyn is such a fun character, and I'm really excited to see more of him in Winds. And I'm not entirely sure if what he says is true or not. He's clearly designed to be like this conspiracy theorist type guy, and I think that maybe there's a kernel of truth there. I think perhaps he's saying the Maesters instigated elements of the Dance of the Dragons, which I think House of the Dragon largely supports. But overall, I think that they probably didn't fully cause the downfall of the Targaryens. That was probably the Targaryens themselves. Who do I think will kill Euron? That's a really good question. I don't know who's going to kill Euron. Victarion, maybe? If he lives that long? I don't know, but I could also... Honestly, kind of ideal would be the two of them killing each other. Almost like... Kind of what happened to Jaime and Euron in the show, but hopefully better. But that's an incredibly low bar. That would be pretty cool, because they're both terrible people and both deserve to die, and it would be great to see them take each other out. Marwyn the Mage is Alex Jones. That doesn't seem far off. Let's see. Reeds married a child of the forest. I really like this idea, given the fact that the Reeds are so small in stature, and they have these green eyes and these green sight powers, and they're right next to the Isle of Faces, which was known as a holy site for the Children of the Forest. I do think that overall the Reeds very much might be related to the Children of the Forest. N squared equals J. Jon was just a bud that split off Ned. I do think asexual reproduction could very much be the case there. I was thinking about that the other day. Do you guys think Jon Arryn was offended that Ned named his bastard after him, but not one of his trueborn children? Because, like, Robb is named after Robert, but Jon Arryn just gets a bastard instead of the heir, which, I don't know. I might think that's uncool if I were Jon Arryn. Let's see. Sam is the author of the books. I don't think this is the case. There's no way that he could be in the heads of these other characters, and especially given that some of these characters are dead, there's no way for them to communicate that to Sam, unfortunately. Let's see. That's an interesting one. Robert Strong has Robert Baratheon's head. So we know that the head of Robert Strong, or Gregor Clegane, was likely sent to the Dornish in A Dance with Dragons. Given the fact that it is so big, I don't think that it is really possible that it's anybody else's head. Maybe a giant's or something, but there are none of those in the South, and I don't know how they would have gotten their hands on one. Given that fact, it seems as though Robert Strong needs to have something under his visor, and this seems to be posing that Robert Baratheon's head might be that. It's the head of a great warrior, it's a very large head, but I'm not sure. It would be pretty decayed by this point because there's about a 2.5 year gap between Robert Baratheon's death and Robert Strong's creation. So, who knows? It's not impossible, but I don't think it's particularly possible. It could be just that 18-year-old Ned wasn't that impressed with Jon Arryn. Let's see. These are going to be getting into some that I'm not familiar with. I'm looking through some of these, and I've never seen some of these before. Tywin caused Summerhall, I just straight up haven't heard. I don't think that's true. He was like a teenager at the time. Not a teenager. He was in his like early 20s, and he was busy doing Castamere, so I don't think he really had the time to do Summerhall as well. The others are good is also an interesting thought, given the fact that we really don't know anything about the others, and their true nature in the books is very mysterious. We see that they kind of had their own language that they seem to be using in the prologue chapter, and given the fact that the men seem to be not always in the right, it could very much be that the others are the good guys in the situation. Qyburn used Jaime's hand for Robert Strong. It's a possibility that I mentioned in my Valonqar video, because some people think that this will make Robert Strong the Valonqar. This one I don't think is very impossible at all, given the fact that Qyburn did have Jaime's hand, given that he treated him at Harrenhal. But overall, I do think that it's probably not the most likely, because Robert Strong does still have two functioning hands, and Jaime's hand might not fit on such a big body. I'll take a beat, and any questions from the chat? Any theory questions, general questions, I'd be happy to answer before we continue down into the depths here. I realize chat is delayed, so that might take a minute to get things. The hand was probably rotten as well, so that probably would not help the case for Qyburn using Jaime's hand for that. Do I think Myrcella could survive? I don't think that Myrcella is particularly likely to survive given the Golden Shrouds thing. Unfortunately, because she does seem very nice. I think the Sand Snakes will probably kill her. Let's see. Who will be the expendable POV in the Winds of Winter prologue? I talked about this in my first A Song of Ice and Fire theory video. I think it's going to be a Maester or a Novice Maester, continuing the trend of even number books having Maester point of views and prologues. And I think they're going to be delivering Jane Westerling's baby on the road. The community has failed us all with a lack of strong Belwas theory crafting. I agree. I have considered making a strong Belwas video before, and I really should do that at some point. Do you believe George will finish Winds and Dreams before he dies? Bearing in mind he's 74 years old now and looks every bit of it. In his defense, he's looked the same for the past 20 years. I do think that the Winds of Winter will be published. Dream of Spring I'm really not sure on. I'm partial to the idea that Dream is not going to take as long as Winds is going to, because it's going to be so much more wrapping up rather than having all of these climaxes. But I do think that he will end up finishing and publishing the Winds of Winter. I think that, honestly, there have been some good signs over the last year. I don't think he's days away from finishing, but I think that I could see it coming out next year, the year after, I think are probably the most likely. Especially if it ends up getting split into two books, which I could also see being a very likely possibility. But this time being two books that are just directly one and one, released a year or 6 months apart. Let's see. Ashara Dane is young Griff's mother. Her eyes are purple. Ashara's a Dane. Why does she have purple eyes? Oh, Ashara is the Minotaur as well as Darkstar. That is why she has purple eyes. In your Valonqar video, I think you missed an option. There is no Valonqar murderer because prophecies are mistaken. It could be someone just caressing Cersei's neck tightly. I could see that there isn't a Valonqar. That is a very good possibility because Martin tends to like to not have prophecies be what you think they are. I don't quite think it'll be just somebody caressing her neck, but that does sound like a very romantic option. Do you think Sweet Robin is Littlefinger's son? Yes. Gladys' video completely sold me on that. Love that video. Do you think Davos was saved by the Drowned God or the Seven on the Blackwater? I don't necessarily think the Seven are like real as people think of them in the universe. I think that's kind of the point. They're kind of a medieval Catholic Church type deal, which I say as a former Catholic. But I think that the idea of somebody saving Davos, it does very much make sense. I think it could be the Merlings or the Drowned God, but who's to say? My sweet summer child. Yeah. I mean, I was born after Storm, but I do still have a bit of hope. Is Azor Ahai a Jesus-type figure? I don't think so. I think it's more complicated than that. Euron will kill himself through his magic. That would be awesome. That is an excellent point in that I do think there's a probably 20% chance that his magic ritual goes wrong and he ends up summoning something that gets him killed, but who's to say? Do I think that Maynard Plum is Bloodraven? 100%. That is a theory from the Dunk and Egg books, which I really need to reread. I haven't read those since, I don't know, 2018, 2019, but those books are excellent. And I do think that Maynard Plum is, I almost said Azor Ahai. Bloodraven. Maynard Plum is not Azor Ahai. What do you think Euron does after the Battle of Blood? I think he marries either Melisandre or Cersei and tries to establish himself as king of the Iron Islands and Westerlands or something like that. Gurm GPT will be ready if ever needed. That's a great point as well. What's up with Marwyn? I think he's a lot darker than Sam portrays him. I agree. He's listed by Martin as one of the kind of darker influences that's coming to Daenerys in Meereen. And I think that overall this could tie into him just being a more evil character. And I think that, I don't know, his conspiratorial elements and elements of magic are very much things that could push Daenerys further into her fire and blood ideas that she kind of picked up from being in the Dothraki Sea. In rereading Dance not too long ago, I did get much more of an appreciation of Daenerys' chapters, especially her last one. It gets a lot of shit for the shit, but it is a really interesting chapter, and I think that her forgetting the name of that child that was burned is just such an excellent moment in showing her journey throughout this book and where she's ended up. I also think Marwyn will probably be arriving in Meereen fairly soon, probably just after the battle. How far into Winds do you think it'll take Dany to get to Westeros? I think that'll be... I don't see it happening in the first half of Winds. I think it'll be anywhere in the second half. It could very much be the, midpoint and going forward from there, but I'm not sure. 3-act structure. I think she needs at least 1 act to finish up in Meereen, if I'm thinking about this. It's just a big stage play, of course, which is super interesting. The Naughtablog mentioned that there might be a stage play version of A Song of Ice and Fire, which would be really neat to see. There's so many cool little stories they could choose for that. My favorite suggestion that somebody mentioned, I think it was on Reddit, was the idea that they could do the Tourney of Harrenhal as a stage play, which I would just absolutely love. I'm not a huge play guy, but I would have to go see that. Let's see. Have I ever read the Feast Dance combined reading order? I haven't, but I've always wanted to. The Boiled Leather one in particular seems really interesting, but I've never been at a point where I can have both books and just be reading them. Because I think this past year, Feast was my work reading. If I had a free period at work, I would just be able to read that, but I didn't have Dance there, unfortunately. Who do you think will get to do the audiobook for Winds? That's a really great question, because R.I.P. Roy Doctorus, he was a legend. My dream pick would be Charles Dance. I think that would be excellent. Honestly, I could see them getting one of the actors from the show, specifically one of the ones that is I don't know, maybe more iconic or has a better voice. I could see Charles Dance. That's my number 1 pick. I'm just going to say that just because I love him. Oh, Gurm has confirmed that the play is about the tourney at Harrenhal. That's excellent. I am pumped. That's going to be awesome. That's excellent. 100% worth it for that boiled leather version. That is really interesting. I need to do that one of these days. I will have to reread the books at some point in the near future for what will be my biggest video ever that isn't coming out for a few years, but I'll have to do that when I'm rereading them. Do you think Rickon will ride a unicorn and become a feral child on Skagos? I think he's already a feral child on Skagos. Riding a unicorn, I could see it being either way. Sean Bean is also another great choice. Good call, heroes. Let's see. I'll turn up my mic again because people seem to be having trouble. So, mic is a little louder now. Great. Harry Lloyd was great for Duncan Egg. I didn't realize he did Duncan Egg. That's awesome. Okay, yeah. Harry Lloyd would be great as well. This is going to alienate probably 90% of my audience, but he was also great in Xenoblade 3, which I played this past year. He was the main villain in that game, and I did like a triple take when I heard his voice for the first time. He did great. My mic is currently being turned up. Let's see. Ian Glenn would also be great. Jorah in the show has a great voice. I do hope that Jorah in the show does not impact Jorah in the books at all, because there are two very distinct characters, and I love Ian Glenn's Jorah, but book Jorah is just awful, and I do not want to see him redeemed as the kind of way that the show kind of did, as he was just kind of better. Do you think Tyrion will lose his tongue? I think it's a distinct possibility, depending on who wins. Given the fact that he's made so many enemies, I could very much see that happen. Specifically with Euron or Cersei or maybe somebody different. Yeah. Let's see. Rickon won't age enough to be an actual character. That is probably true, unfortunately. Because he's what, like 4 at this point? 5, maybe? I think he's 5 as of this point. Yeah, that makes sense. I do really like the fact that, I hadn't realized this till I was rereading, but the Purple Wedding is the first day of the new century, which is just such a great touch. Do I think any major point of view characters will die in the Winds of Winter? I think several major point of view characters will die in Winds. Aeron, probably. Barristan, probably. Hotah, probably. Maybe Hotah will survive. Martin mentioned writing like a bunch of Hotah chapters in a blog post, I think a couple years ago, and I was shocked that he would have that many. I do think that some others are going to die. Connington, unfortunately, rest his soul. The greatest character is probably not making it out of Winds. Born in 295, so yeah, he's 5. Where will the final battle occur? I think the final battle with the others will be at the Isle of Faces. I think the final battle of the series will probably be King's Landing. Next Davos chapter is going to be really interesting. I've seen people kind of pitch that he's going to just have his first chapter be on the boat back from Skagos. I really hope that's not the case. I'm excited to see it. Victarion is not dying. I will die on this hill. At least I don't think Victarion is going to die in the Battle of Fire. I am ready to eat my words if that is the case, but given the fact that Victarion has been in 2 books and been planned to die in both of those books and survived both times, I think that he's going all the way. Victarion sweep. Yeah, upcoming Frey Lannister wedding, probably going to be the Red Wedding too. Yeah, John Connington's probably going to go out great. If I had to guess, burning to death in King's Landing after going Bell crazy. But it'll be great. It'll be great. Gotta love John Conn. Yeah. I wish he had more chapters, but I'm happy with the 2 he has. That's also part of why I don't think the Battle of Steel is going to happen. I was realizing this as I was reading through some old blog posts of Martin's. Because at one point he talks about the 2 Arion sample chapters he's published, and he talked about the fact that he had another point of view chapter that was complementary to the second one, which is definitely a John Connington chapter. Given the fact that it is just one chapter that is complementary to it, I don't think that we're going to see the battle at all. I think the battle is already going to be done, or it's going to be solved with diplomacy. I think that overall it's not really going to be much, given the fact that it is just probably one more chapter there. What's my ideal prologue? I've got a whole video on this. It's Jaime Westerling giving birth to Robb Stark's heir on the way to the Crag or Castamere, or whichever of those 2 it would be. I think probably Castamere. And hopefully Lady Stoneheart playing a role there as well. Let's see. What is a non-Westerosi location that you'd most likely to see described by a point of view character or elaborated on more? So, Asshai by far, and I think there is some decent hope that we will get more elaboration on it because Melisandre's from Asshai, which is great. I believe both Aegon and Jon Con and Edric Storm. Yeah, Edric Storm is an interesting case. He's very much still out there somewhere, and we don't really know where he is or how he's going to pop up again. Yeah, we shall see. I could see him getting kind of the show Gendry plot of being legitimized and made the heir to Storm's End, but I couldn't see that happening via Daenerys because he's the last son of the last undisputed monarch. So, yeah, not a great move on Daenerys' part in the show, but she just had coffee, which was right in front of her. So, I can't really blame her. Let's see. So let's get back to this a little bit. Ned is alive. He's not. Robb was given a love potion is a really interesting one. We hear about Sybil Spicer, the mother of Jane Westerling, Robb's queen, giving Jane these potions to supposedly help her have a kid. We later learn that these are potions to make sure she doesn't have a kid. They're moon tea. That's the word I was looking for. Given that, and given the fact that the Spicers are known for like making these things, perhaps Robb, while he was being treated by Jane Westerling, as that was kind of how they ended up falling in love, he was given a love potion to potentially cause him to fall in love with her and then marry her. So maybe, possibility. Maybe Aegon legitimizes Edric. I could see that as well if he makes him like swear loyalty as well. I have no idea what Khal Drogo's master plan is. If any of you know what this is, feel free to say, because I do not know. Cracked moon meteorites, I keep hearing like referenced at different places, but I have no clue what that is or means. Let's see. Bloodraven made the Mad King mad. I think this kind of ties into the idea of the show as well, with Bran potentially making the Mad King mad. Just the fact that Bloodraven is this powerful warg and has the ability to influence events throughout the entire continent. The thought is that perhaps he was able to dip into the mind of the Mad King and kind of reinforce the burn them all that was just repeating there constantly. Sansa is Littlefinger's daughter. She's not. If Littlefinger has a secret kid, it was covered up here with Sweet Robin. I went up too far. Where's Sweet Robin? Somewhere in here. Sweet Robin is Littlefinger's son, not Sansa. Bloodraven is Craster's father. Interesting. I mean, they're at right place and roughly correct time, but I don't think that's the case, personally. Dany is the Mummer's dragon. I don't think she would get a warning against herself. And I don't think her story is going to be one where the common people are going to be supporting her when she arrives at Westeros. Because the big thing about that vision is that the Mummer's dragon is raised above a cheering crowd on poles. So I don't think that really fits into Dany's story. The Doom of Valyria caused climate disaster. I think the Doom of Valyria probably was a climate disaster. I don't know if it caused one, at least elsewhere. Stannis plans to sell the wildlings into slavery. I don't think that's the case, but I do think they're pretty expendable in his army, given the fact that they are on the lake, and I do think that they're probably going to end up breaking formation and end up falling through the ice with the Freys and Manderleys. Varys Bird, that's the wrong spot for an apostrophe. I don't know. Varys' birds are Bloodraven. They're not. Penny is Tyrion's daughter. I don't like that idea at all. I'm not partial to it. Just because two characters are of the same stature does not mean that they are related. Let's see. So, do I think ice spiders exist? If so, what do you think they're like? I think they probably do, and I bet we'll see them in the others' plans going forward, if I had to guess. Just because there really are a ton of interesting creatures in the lore of like Sithorios and other parts of Essos, and I think it would be cool to see more of them from Westeros, from the far north. I would be very excited. Mance equals Rhaegar. I disagree. Mance is not Rhaegar. Dany will go mad. I don't think is going to happen because I think that it's more just going to be her being angry about Aegon ascending the throne before she does, and the people loving him instead of her. Moon meteor. That's the thing that they put moon meteors twice. As this gets deeper down, it's beginning to get a little more incoherent. Got it. So the black box on the screen was supposed to be the chat, but it's not working. I just got a new laptop, and that might be why. It should be fixed for next stream. How do I think the others will get through the wall? I think that it could be possible that they sail around it via Eastwatch. I think that there could be some mix-up with the magic, as there is in the show, with Bran potentially getting like marked by another or something, and him passing through the wall allows them to pass through the wall. I'm really not sure on how they'll get through. I'm sure Martin's going to think of something more creative than I could. I'm on the wrong tier, aren't I? Yeah, I was up here. Yeah. Sailor's wife is Tysha. I don't think that's the case. I think the Sailor's wife is likely related to Garyon, and she might have been his wife when he passed through, but I don't think she's Tysha. The timeline doesn't really match up for that. Cold Hands is a warged white. I don't think that's the case because we know that. I don't know. Maybe it could be, but I think that Cold Hands is a bit too put together to be a full on white. I think that he's kind of partially a white. I think that's part of his thing, but I don't think he's fully a warged white. Also, white should be WIGHT, not the color. Also, I'll have a video out on Tuesday at noon, hopefully. I've recorded it yesterday, and it's currently being edited about Cold Hands and about who he might be. So that'll hopefully be fun. Will Wins be published in 2024? God, I hope so. My hope, and what I think is likely right now, is that I think that given how big Wins is, he said it's going to be likely 200 to 300 pages longer than Storm or Dance, and that size of a book can't be published physically. It just can't be printed. So what I hope is going to happen is that given the fact that the book is already 75% done, it could get split in two and have the first published like 2024, second published 25, or 25, 26, probably more likely. That's my ideal hope, but I don't think it's particularly likely. Mance wrote the pink letter. I don't think that should be this far down. I think that's a pretty common theory overall. Euron's horn is the horn of winter. That's an interesting one. That's kind of mixing theories that I haven't really heard before. Yeah, that would be fascinating. Huh. I don't think so, though. It's very clearly a Valyrian horn, and the wall is not tied to Valyria at all. I'd say Bran is probably more likely to go mad, or at least maybe go mad with power than Dany, probably. Yeah, his concrete progress is very optimistic, and I like the fact that, at least on his blog recently, all of his moods have been positive, even when dealing with the strike, and I think that's probably a better sign than anything else. He tends to be fairly candid with those. Will Stone Snake be the Winds of Winter prologue? I talk about Stone Snake in Tuesday's video. I don't think so, but that would be fascinating. Because we do know that the prologue will feature Jain Westerling, as we know from Martin himself, and Stone Snake is nowhere near the Westerlands, unfortunately. Let's see. Got in a little late because I was watching Haven. Excellent, that's great. I hate the Bran storyline, so contrived. I wasn't a huge fan of Bran's chapters prior to Dance, but I think all of his magical stuff is super interesting, though I think it's probably why the Winds of Winter is taking so long, unfortunately. Let's see. Yeah, Mance wrote the pink letter is definitely too far down. That should be like 2 tiers up. Question for the chat. Who do you think wrote the pink letter? Oh, this is an interesting one. Bright flames were the original Blackfires. That is very much, I think, the truth in Martin's writing, given the fact that the bright flames are established earlier on than the Blackfires are, and I think that they were intended to be the evil cadet Targaryen branch rather than the Blackfires. So I think that earlier on in George R.R. Martin's plans, Aegon was probably going to be a descendant of Maegor Brightflame rather than the Blackfires. Will Theon reconcile with the Starks similar to the show? I think it's definitely possible, and I think that given his current arc, it's probably likely. He's probably going to run into at least Jon or Sansa, and hopefully that does end up happening. Manderley wrote it. I'm glad so many people enjoyed that theory. I agree that I think that Manderley is probably the most likely to do it. Mostly because of his uniquely bad circumstance, regardless of the outcome of the Battle of Ice. George did write it. That is a good point. Let's see. Azor Ahai equals the Night's King. That doesn't really track with any elements of the prophecy, unfortunately. Cold Hands is the Night King is something that I'll discuss in Tuesday's video. Either Manderley or Mance, definitely not Ramsay. Daemon One Blackfire isn't even really evil by Song of Ice and Fire. Yeah, not evil. That's kind of a misnomer. The Bright Flames were evil. The Blackfires less so, but at least in Dany's eyes, and supposedly the eyes of like the viewer and the reader, the Blackfires are typically supposed to be viewed as the worst Targaryen faction, I believe. Yeah, let's see. Three-Eyed Crow is Bran from the future. Time-traveling Bran. This theory I was initially very opposed to when it first came out, but it's grown on me a lot in the time since. I'm a big fan of time-traveling Bran these days. Didn't we already do Sweet Robin as Littlefinger's son? Strange. I must have accidentally gone to the wrong tier. Alright. Bloodraven killed King Robb. Oh, King Robert Baratheon. I thought that was saying Robb Stark. No, it was... this theory says that perhaps Bloodraven warged into the boar that killed Robert Baratheon, which Maybe, I don't know. I don't know how the War of the Five Kings would serve his interests that well, especially given the fact that the crown was pretty weak to begin with. Let's see. Edric Dane is Ned's son. I don't think he is. I think he was named for Ned because Ned did something good for the Danes, but I don't think he's Ned's son. Stone Snake, we don't know if he's alive or not. He's missing. I hope he's alive. If not the Hound, who will take on Robert Strong in the end? I could see it being Loras Tyrell. That's my main thought, given the fact that he might not be as injured as people think he is, and he could end up facing him in that trial by combat. Additionally, I'm sure there are other people the Faith could call. It could be Lancel just getting completely murdered by Robert Strong in the trial by combat. Let's see. Moon meteors, yeah. Also, I always forget to say this, but you guys are free to super chat and donate. I think are things that I have enabled for this stream. It took me a while to figure out how to enable those things, but they are enabled if you want me to answer your questions or generally hear anything. But yeah, no. So Mance equals Rhaegar is the lowest part of this tier, and I think that it should probably be a couple lower because I really don't think Mance is Rhaegar. Unfortunately, sorry if that's what you think, but there's really not much evidence to the fact that Mance would be Rhaegar. Let's see. Drowned Whites, Patchface. I think this ties into the idea that Patchface might be a white of the drowned god. He could be influenced by that deity, similarly to how the whites are influenced by what might be the Great Other, essentially this deity of cold and ice that might be acting as the big kind of face behind the thought of the others. I don't think it's the Night King like it is in the show, but I think that there is probably some leader of some sort to the White Walkers, to the others. I will answer this question even though it's not a super chat. You're welcome, Hey Red Whale. Maester shrunk the dragons. This kind of ties into the idea that the dragons were very much decreasing in size after the time of the Targaryens, after the time of the Dance of the Dragons, excuse me. And given that fact, the thought is that maybe they were poisoned by the Maesters, and maybe that they had some poor influence over that. I think that more likely it was just the dragons being in captivity, but overall I think that the Maesters may have played some role in that. There is some evidence of that in that Marwyn claims to have killed the dragons the last time around on behalf of the Maesters, but I don't know how much we can believe Marwyn, given the fact that he does seem to be kind of a fairly chatty guy. A Song of Ice and Fire is a post-apocalypse story. I don't think we'll know either way on this one, so I don't think it's the most worth speculating on. Honey, I Shrunk the Dragons. Dragon glass comes from killing dragons. It comes from volcanoes, actually. It's obsidian. Let's see. Benjen does equal... Benjen equals Dario. That's an interesting one. So the thought here is that Benjen vanishes from the story and Dario appears in the story. And who knows? Dario's appearance does seem to be some sort of disguise with this blue beard and all this strange stuff. But, yeah, no, I don't think Benjen is Dario. I think Euron is obviously Dario and Benjen is Euron, but I don't think that Benjen could be Dario. Robert Strong is the Valonqar we talked about a bit earlier, with him potentially having Jaime's hand, and the irony of him being the quote-unquote little brother, even though he's an older brother and he's massive, despite the fact that he has this little brother's hand. Old Nan wrote the books. I don't like the idea that these books exist in universe. This isn't like a Lord of the Rings type thing. We are in these characters' heads. We are knowing their thoughts. We are seeing things from their perspectives, and there's really no way that that really could happen in universe. And I think that overall, it's probably not the most likely. Benjen does equal strong Belwas. Thank you, Inquisitor Thomas. That does seem on the money there. Fish people are real ties into the idea of the Squishers, this kind of race of Lovecraftian fish people that live under the sea, supposedly. And there is some evidence for this, in that the people who live on these 3 islands on the narrow sea called the Sisters have these webbed feet and toes, which are interesting and could tie into them being related to these Squishers at some point. Strong Belwas equals Dario is an interesting theory. Benjen does equal Cersei. Good. I was looking this up recently because I had to look up Old Nan for a theory. I don't think Old Nan is dead. We don't hear of her dying. We think she might be at the Dreadfort is the last thing we hear. But given the fact that it's the Dreadfort, maybe she didn't survive it. Uh, Griff is a bright flame. Um, I think it's trying to say that young Griff is a bright flame. I don't think John Connington is a bright flame. And this ties into the idea that the original Blackfires were the Bright Flames. They're established early on in the series as this cadet Targaryen branch who could be antagonistic to the main Targaryens. And it seems as though, at least in Martin's early drafts, the Targaryen threat from the east to Daenerys was going to be somebody descended from Maegor Brightflame, the son of Aerion Brightflame. I always say Aeron instead of Aerion, but yeah, no, those are two similar names. And I did steal the name Aerion for a D&D game at one point. Let's see. All Brands are Bran. This is the idea that every Bran Stark is the same Bran Stark, just kind of time traveling and having his consciousness warped into all of them. Similarly to Old Nan, who can never die. Bran will warg into a dragon is another popular idea. Given the fact that warging is this power over animals, and dragons are pretty much the most powerful animals that exist in this universe, it would very much make sense that he could end up trying to exert power over them to some degree. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't know if Old Nan survives the Boltons. Dragons are wyverns plus fireworms. That's an interesting thought. So the fireworms appear starting in Fire and Blood. We see that Arya Targaryen is killed by them, and it ends up being just this horrifying scene where she ends up having these worms just kind of explode out of her, and she dies, unfortunately. And the thought is that the Valyrians might have crossbred these natural wyverns that live in Essos, or wyverns, wyverns, I'm not sure what the correct pronunciation is. My D&D players get on me for that too. But the thought is that the Valyrians did a lot of like crossbreeding between animal species, and perhaps dragons are the product of wyverns and fireworms combined together. Biter is a fishman. This is another interesting idea that Biter seems almost unhuman in certain degrees, and the thought is that maybe he's somehow related to the Squishers. He could be directly a Squisher or just descended from them. Howland Reed is the High Sparrow. There's an Alt-Shift-X video on this. Is that what this is linking to? No, it's evidence. But it's a thought that we've never met Howland Reed, and he kind of mentions the description of the High Sparrow, and the High Sparrow kind of progresses Stark goals, and I don't know. I don't personally buy this one. Tyrion as a Chimera is an interesting idea. It kind of combines the theory that he is a secret Targaryen with the idea that he is Tywin's son, and the thought here is that he could have been both of theirs simultaneously, because I guess that's a thing that can happen in science. I'm not sure. I'm not a geneticist. But personally, I don't buy that. I think that Tyrion is probably just Tywin's son, because it kind of cheapens both of their arcs if he's not. Azor Ahai's sword is mirrored by the death of the Targaryens. I think that, I don't know what that's talking about. I don't know. Tommen is the Valonqar is the idea that Tommen will die, that he will come back to life, and that Qyburn will reanimate him, and he will end up accidentally killing his mother, Cersei, the little brother. How does Brienne's bitten face affect her arc at all? Good question. I don't know. Her arc is already concerned with the idea of kind of chivalry regardless of how it appears. I think that'll just tie into it further. Let's see. Quaithe as Ashara Dane is not an idea that I've heard before. Quaithe is this mysterious masked figure, and we don't know who she is, but I am more partial to the idea that she is Shiera Seastar rather than Ashara Dane. Say that 5 times fast. Shiera Seastar. Well, if the bite gets infected. I don't think the bite will get infected. I don't think Bran's going to die from a random infection. I think that if there is a character that I think is going to survive to the end of the series, it's probably going to be Bran. I think this will be the last tier, and we'll save the bottom tier for another time at this point. But this is going to be quite a journey for this last tier. Tyrion is a test sent for Tywin. I have not heard this theory at all. I think that maybe it's saying that, like, I don't know what it's saying at all, honestly. I don't know who would be sending this test. What deity? I'm not sure. George made the show bad on purpose to market the books. This is straight up false. I think the main reason the show is bad is because they started to deviate away from George's ideas, and the relationship between Martin and the showrunners ended up breaking down, and unfortunately that ended in the kind of demise of the show. It ended in a lot of plot lines getting dropped for seemingly no reason, and unfortunately it ended up with a much worse show than it could have been. Varys is a Merling, I think, is the idea that I think he once says that what, the big fish eat the little fish, and I just keep swimming. It's not really all that concrete of an idea. I think that also maybe he matches some of the depictions of the squishers, as they're also often depicted as bald, but I don't think he's a squisher to any degree. I think that his baldness is likely to come from shaving his head, like Aegon Targaryen did in Dunk and Egg. Quaithe is Daenerys from the future, is an idea that essentially more Quaithe identities, that Daenerys is somehow telepathically talking to herself from the past. I don't really buy that particularly, as I don't think that Daenerys has that kind of power. I'm going to skip this one so I don't get demonetized. Tyrion will love Arya is an idea from the original drafts. There was initially supposed to be a love triangle between Jon Snow, Arya Stark, and Tyrion Lannister that Martin seems to have very mercifully have dropped in his current iteration of the story. Shape of the planet theories I'm not aware of. I'm sure some people think Westeros is flat, but who's to say? Ned is a bird. This comes from the show where Ned's head getting cut off transitions directly into a shot of pigeons flying away. So people think that, similar to Varamir Sixskins living a second life in his animals, perhaps Ned Stark and his warging powers warged into these pigeons who flew away and were able to survive. So perhaps Ned is still out there acting as a pigeon in King's Landing. Azor Ahai already died, so we're fucked. I think that this ties into the idea that perhaps Rhaegar could be the Azor Ahai, and perhaps Jon is Lightbringer. Oh, hi Gladys. Planet is horse-shaped. That is obviously true. I saw the Barbie movie last night, and there was a point where there was a Mount Rushmore with horse heads on it, and I did immediately think of all the Song of Ice and Fire theories since April 1st, 2022. Kat lied about the letter. Okay, this is interesting. So, I don't think this is necessarily the truth, given that we're in Kat's head and we see her thoughts. Any of these theories about, like, characters lying and their point of view characters are generally kind of shaky in my eyes, unless that character has a deliberately tenuous grip on reality. Like Theon, I think, maybe has some memory issues where there are things that might not be as they seem in his head. Let's see. Jon will stay as a wolf? I don't think so. Jon Snow is currently probably warged into ghosts, living the second life, similar to Varamir Sixskins. But I don't think he's going to stay that way, because he is kind of one of the main characters of this story, and I don't think that Martin would end up making one of his main characters a wolf for the entire story. A horse, however, who's to say? Oh, you're right. I think you're right about that, Gladys. It is definitely, I think, one of theirs, but it's one of their anti-cat things. You're right. I forgot about those videos. I watched those videos in, like, 2018, I think, and, yeah, not the best. Cat's not all that bad. The Jon that was killed was a disguised Tormund that thought he was Jon. Interesting. I had a scrapped April Fool's Day video idea that was going to be this past April Fool's Day that was saying that the Jon that died in The Winds of Winter, or not The Winds of Winter, the last chapter of A Dance with Dragons was actually Jon Connington, and the reason that he's introduced as a point of view character was to have this misdirect where he is the actual Jon in the last Jon chapter. He's come into his own, and he's actually protecting Rhaegar's son by being stabbed for him. But I didn't end up making that one. I went with Victarion as Azor Ahai in the Balonqar instead. I do already have an idea for this April Fool's Day, which I'm very excited for, though. Let's see. Warging is linked to the X chromosomes. This, I think, comes from the genetics of Ice and Fire series. The thought that these magical abilities, I think that's more focused on dragon riding, though. Warging, I'm not sure. That doesn't make a ton of sense, because we know that Bran is a very powerful warg, and we know that it's likely that the warging powers came from the Starks, not the Tullys, and Bran's only X chromosome should be from Catelyn, not from Ned Stark, if I'm just Punnett squaring this in my head. Let's see. Tower of Joy was a blood magic ritual? Probably not. Probably not. I think that Summerhall was a blood magic ritual, but not Tower of Joy. Renly's armor killed him was one that came up on a different live stream, I think, and I don't really know what it was. No, that was in my ranking every theory video, and I really don't know what it is. Renly's armor killing him, I think I remember it being something to do with the Florence, but I'm really not sure. Isn't that a real theory? It might be. Um, let's see. I'm not sure about Renly's armor. If any of you know, I'd love to hear. But Tyrion is a time traveling fetus is the thought that Tyrion might secretly be the son of Daenerys and Khal Drogo, Rhaego, the stallion that mounts the world, that somehow through Mary Mazder's magic time traveled back into Joanna Lannister for some reason. I'm not sure. I hear Otis. You should turn your mic up. I will. My mic is at max right now. This mic sucks. I'm going to get closer to it though. I actually have a new mic that is currently in the mail and will hopefully be here within the week. So this will hopefully be my last stream with a bad audio setup, and I apologize for that. Let's see. But yeah, that is the Tyrion is a time traveling fetus theory. Joffrey killed himself. Joffrey poisoned himself to get at Tyrion and miscalculated the dosage. That's an interesting one that I haven't heard as well. I think Joffrey's probably petty enough to do that, but I don't think that is actually what ended up happening. Jonza is the idea that Jon and Sansa will get together. I think it comes from that tourney that is in the... I forget where that comes from. It's a tourney somewhere in the history of A Song of Ice and Fire where this one noble lady has a bunch of suitors and they match up with the suitors of Sansa Stark. And the last one is a Targaryen. And the thought because of that is that Jon and Sansa will end up getting together at the end of the story. Which I think isn't that unlikely. I think people also pitched it as Aegon and Sansa getting together. But overall, I'm not entirely sure. I don't think that Sansa's arc is one that's going to revolve a ton around romance, essentially, because that kind of ties into the thought that the stories that she had always wanted to be a part of are not really as things are in the real world. And I think that that idea is more Sansa coming into her own as an individual rather than through a romantic relationship. Let's see. Joffrey just had a food allergy. I talked about this in the Ranking Every Theories video as well. I don't think it's true, but as somebody who has several food allergies, I think that sure, it's a possibility. Maybe like a 0.5% chance. But Ashford Tourney, that's it. Thank you. But yeah, no, that's technically a possibility that Joffrey had a food allergy. How will wake the dead Starks? I think this is saying that the Horn of Winter will wake the dead Starks. So it's saying that when this horn is blown by Sam or by Euron or by whoever, it is going to end up, rather than bringing the wall down, wake the dead Starks from their graves in the tombs. I think the tombs definitely have some role in the story in the future. I'm not entirely sure what that is. There could be a dragon egg down there that could have some role in defending people from the others, but I don't think the Horn of Winter is going to wake them up, specifically, because I think the Horn of Winter probably predates the tombs. Yeah, how did Martin come up with Weirwoods? That's a really good question. They are really interesting. But it does tie into a lot of his earlier work. He does a lot of stuff with, like, telepathic networks and whatnot. But yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, let's do this last tier, just to knock it out. Let's keep going. Tyrion was trying to poison himself. There's no evidence for that. It's his point of view, and we really don't know that he tried to poison anybody. So yeah, Tyrion was not trying to poison himself, unfortunately. A Song of Ice and Fire can all be explained with misspelled science. I think that elements of it can be explained with science. However, there are definitely magical elements in the story that I really don't think can be debated. There aren't fire-breathing dragons in our world, and smarter people than I have talked about how dragons don't work, like, physiologically, but yeah, no. I'm going to skip this one because I will get demonetized. Valyrians are lizard people. I really like this idea, and it kind of ties into a lot of stuff from House of the Dragon, most notably these tapestries that keep appearing in the background of scenes in The Right to Keep, where we see essentially these people and these dragons just kind of locked in these scenes, and it ties into the idea that I talked about earlier of Valyrians kind of crossbreeding animal species in order to kind of advance things in their kind of sick and twisted ideas. But I think that overall that could be why these Valyrians and dragons have these bonds. They're both not dissimilar in terms of their genetic makeup. The world is a dragon egg, and the sky is the eye of a blue-eyed giant named Macumba. If you go further north, the others have a second wall. I don't think there's any speculation on what exactly exists to the far north. I think this might come from the show, where we see this big fortress they have of ice in the far north, and I think that that might be the origin of that. The others are from space. We really don't know much about the origin of the others, other than what the show tells us, which is that they were created by the children of the forest. Time will tell if that ends up being the case in the books, but overall, we'll see. Winds and Dream will be released at once is not going to happen at all. I don't think there's any chance that Dream is currently finished by any means. I think that, I mean, hopefully Winds comes out soon, but we'll see when and if Dreams ever gets released. Let's see. Heart of Winter. Yeah, that's a good point. Let's see. Euron becoming a dragon squid god ties into the whole Eldritch Apocalypse idea. The thought that he is going to end up possessing all of this power from his dragon horn that's going to call one of Daenerys' dragons to him, and that he is going to somehow become the Kraken through this deep ritual or whatever. I don't think that Euron's magic is going to go that well. I think at best, maybe it'll like help him defeat people at Old Town or help him get to King's Landing or something. But I don't think he is going to become anything. I think this also ties into the vision in the Forsaken chapter where we see Euron kind of having the face of like a squid Cthulhu god and ruling over everything in Aeron's nightmares. But I think that overall those dreams that Aeron has are kind of an exaggeration of things, how things could turn out if Aeron's worst dream comes true, which we'll see if it does or doesn't. Let's see. Couple more. Comets equal alien invasion. So I assume this ties into the Red Comet that takes place early on in A Clash of Kings. And the thought is that it ends up tying into an alien invasion somehow. I bet this probably ties into the others being from space idea. But overall, the comet seems to be a signal of magic returning to the world rather than aliens returning to the world. The only world where aliens are real are ours, apparently, if the government hearings are to be believed, which I don't know. I haven't been paying attention to that. I've been too busy teaching this week. Ned plus Lyanna equals Jon. This one has a link. I'm kind of afraid to open it, and I'm not going to. But I don't really know what that comes from. Maybe the Promise Me Ned idea, and the fact that they were both at the Tower of Joy, but he hadn't seen her for over a year before the Tower of Joy. So that's not, I don't think, physically possible. Last one over here, also not going to talk about for demonetization reasons. It's not the case. And most importantly, we have the Omni-Walder. The Omni-Walder being that all Walders are the same time-traveling Walder. This is obviously canon, given the fact that the Freys do have these deep ties to skin-changing, probably, as they're all described as, what, some sort of animal. I think they keep describing Walders as stoat, if my read of A Storm of Swords was correct. I'm not sure, I don't remember. I just remember him saying heh a lot, because I just finished that. But Omni-Walder, obviously canon, given that all Walders are the same. I don't know how many Walders there are. We did that ranking every Frey video, and we ranked a bunch of Walders. I think there were 5 or 6, but there are certainly several. Omni-Walder and Omni-Bran are certainly best of friends. And this is obviously paralleled with the relationship between Little Walder and Bran, this kind of rivalry that exists. You should be proud of that one, Gladys. That might be my favorite fake theory of the video. But yeah, with that, we've finished this entire iceberg. We did the first half in an earlier stream. I think that was my first stream ever. Anybody have any questions, theory pitches, anything else? I'll stay on for, I don't know, maybe 10 more minutes, just a general talk now that we've finished the entirety of this massive iceberg. And this is a very appropriate picture for this last one. And thank you, Xander JC on Twitter, for providing this excellent iceberg. Mostly excellent iceberg. There were some typos. But yeah, no, very, very good. Let's see. Jon Snow plus Tyrion equals Tywin. Plausible, big if true. Hooked on lemon cakes. I don't know that I've ever had a lemon cake, actually, for how much they're talked about in A Song of Ice and Fire. Hodor is a Walder. I think Martin said that's true at some point. It was either in an interview or I don't think it was somewhere in the books. But I think I remember him saying that Hodor's true name in the books was Walder instead of whatever it was in the show. Willis, I think? Was it Willis? I don't recall. Rank every food description. Somebody's already doing that much better. That's Glidus and Alt-Shift-X. You should check those videos out. Swift-X. Sorry, I misspoke. Different people. But absolutely check those streams out. They are a ton of fun. Hopefully we get an outfit description one in the future as well. Red Door theories. So this is the thought that Daenerys's home, the House with the Red Door, isn't actually in Braavos as it's described because the lemon trees are not able to grow in Braavos. And I think that overall it could just be commenting on just the elements of Dany's past blending together. I think she did probably stay in Dorne for a time, but I don't think she was raised there overall. Let's see. It is in the books. Okay, excellent. I will have to look for that after this. I've had lemon pies if that's the same thing. I don't know if it's the same thing. I think it's different. I remember my mamaw making lemon cakes when I was little, but I had so many allergies that I couldn't have them. So I've seen them, I've smelled them, I haven't eaten them, but those allergies are gone now, so maybe I should try one at some point. And mamaw is southern U.S. for grandmother, or great-grandmother in this case, for those who might be unaware. I apologize. Let's see. Lemon tree was a tapestry. That's an interesting one, and I'm sure that could tie into the actual lemon tree tapestry. Oh, that's an interesting angle, because there is a lemon tree tapestry in House of the Dragon with the whole Lemon Gate moment in, I think it's episode 5. So maybe that kind of is saying that, oh, maybe this was a tapestry in that instance too. There are 6 if you include that. Ah, got it. That is a lot of Walders. So total 10 Walders and 5 Waldas. Are the Waldas included in the Omni Walder Glidus? That is a really interesting question in this time traveling council. Ned plus Catelyn equals Jon Snow. I love the idea that they were just trying to gaslight and just mess with Jon Snow for the entirety of his life. That is, I think, the best possible outcome of that. Yeah, it is from his award-winning Fake A Song of Ice and Fire video, Theories video, probably my favorite video on the platform. Fat Walda is best Walda. I mean, best Frey is Gatehouse Amy, bar none, but Fat Walda is also pretty good. Hopefully she gets a better ending than she did in the show. Poor Fat Walda in the show. I think she is still alive. Yeah, if a Frey is going to survive in Winterfell, it'll be Fat Walda, luckily. Not anybody in the pies, unfortunately. Oh, the idea that Robb is Brandon's child is an interesting one. I don't necessarily think it's the case. I think it's an interesting possibility, but I don't think the story really gains anything from him being the son of Ned's brother instead of Ned himself. And additionally, this is another case where Catelyn would have thought about that. This is my one, wild hope for the Winds of Winter that I've had, I think probably since I read the series in 2016, was that I really want at least one Lady Stoneheart chapter in the Winds of Winter. Just because Catelyn is back, she was a point of view, and I don't know, I don't think he's going to stop doing Jon chapters, is my thought, and it'd just be neat to see one chapter from Stoneheart's perspective. Perhaps instead of getting a Jaime or a Brienne chapter to see their confrontation with her, we go to Lady Stoneheart for the first time in 2 books. Yeah, exactly. That's Renly's Robert's son. There's really not a point to that. I did have a funny idea for a theory the other day when I was rereading the Clash prologue, which is way longer than I remembered. It's 30 pages of prologue, that Stannis actually is Cressen's son because he calls him his son. But yeah, no. I don't think that Robb is Brandon's son. He's Littlefinger's son, actually, because Littlefinger was with Cat first, as we all know. That does seem like the idea. Lady Stoneheart chapter was just brains for 14 pages. The idea of a mute POV is also quite interesting, and I think that's kind of the thought of why so many people want Ilyn Payne to be the prologue point of view for Winds, even though I think it's more likely to be a Maester. Yeah. What's my favorite city in A Song of Ice and Fire? That's an interesting one. Favorite city, I think, is probably just King's Landing, because we've seen it the most. But if I'm talking favorite castle, I've got to say Storm's End. I think it's just super cool. I love nuclear power plants, and I just love the design of it. I was really excited to see it in House of the Dragon. I think they did a really good job with it, too. It was not a Casterly Rock situation, fortunately. Which, Casterly Rock also could have a chance to climb on my favorite castles ranking when we see it in Winds, should it be published, which hopefully it is. Patchface is the real Renly? I don't think so. I mean, their descriptions in Stefan's letter aren't dissimilar, but Renly was a baby, and Patchface was a full-grown boy. I have a feeling we won't get any more John chapters. I see it's about a coin flip in my eyes as well. I could very much see that we won't get any more John chapters, but I'd be very sad because I love John chapters. Yeah, no. I think my biggest regret in my top 10 point of view characters was not adding John to that list, because I think he deserves to be on it after my rude dance. But I think that, I don't know, I must have forgotten about those. I kind of forgot about the John. Tongueless Tyrion could be my mute point of view. That's a good point. John Con equals Mance. I think John Con equals John Con, fortunately. I love Braavos. That's a great point. Braavos is really cool as well, and I think it's an interesting intersection point in so many characters' stories. I really like seeing like Arya interact with Daeron there, and all the potential stuff that could happen with maybe Daenerys passing through. That is how I think. I tend to think that Arya is going to get to Westeros either through just, I don't know, sneaking on a ship, or maybe like if Daenerys' forces end up passing through Braavos, which maybe they will. They probably won't. That's too far north. She could end up like just sneaking along with them. Let's see. What comes first? A Dream of String or Sithorio's spin-off show? I think probably Yi Ti spin-off show comes before either, in all honesty. Which, get hyped for the Golden Empire, folks. I know nothing about Yi Ti, so it'll be interesting to say the least. The Corlys show I look forward to, though. Corlys was probably my favorite character in House of the Dragon, because Steve Toussaint just did a fantastic job. Evil tongueless Tyrion with Penny ventriloquist doll is a terrifying image. Thank you for that, Earl Pipe. Yeah, great. Well, I think I'm going to call the stream here. Thank you all so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Glidus, for stopping by. And yeah, I'll do more streams in the near future, hopefully. I do have things starting up soon, so yeah, I will be back with a new video on Tuesday. I'll be covering Cold Hands and who I think he is and possibilities for who he could be. So yeah, thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all in the near future. Bye, everybody.